Get ready to uncover truths and reality of today's politics. Here's your host, Lori Mills.
Hi, this is Lori Mills. Welcome to another edition of Uncover California. You know, what a week in the news we've had, you guys. President Trump was almost assassinated, and I can tell you the Lord Jesus had his hand on our president. If he wouldn't have had his head turned and tilted right when he did, he wouldn't be here today. And the strength we saw with him pumping his fist, fight, 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 after being shot, it was something for the history books. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that moment. And for him to have the courage to walk into the RNC in that huge crowd last night to get J.D. Vance on the ticket, I tell you what, he's a brave man. And he's a man that we need in a time such as this. On another note, corrupt Melendez was found guilty today. Rightfully so. But on today's episode, we've got a very, very special guest, John Eastman, who has again faced the lawfare that we've been watching for the last 8 years. This man is a constitutional attorney, former attorney for President Donald J. Trump. And I'll tell you what, the uniparty, globalist, Marxist, lawfare campaign, the communism has had their target on him as well. And it's our goal here at Uncover California to let everybody know what the truth is. The left has been lying to you for 8 years, and Trump derangement syndrome is a mental illness. And I stand with John Eastman. I stand with Rudy Giuliani. I stand with President Donald J. Trump. And right now, I would like to welcome our very special guest, John Eastman, to the show. Welcome, John. Thanks for coming in today.
Well, Lori, thanks for having me back on your program. It is indeed a very monumental week, not just the near miss that we had with an assassination attempt. The Republican convention starting and President Trump, allowed to be there rather than at a jail cell because of a Supreme Court immunity ruling a couple weeks ago. But we also had an extremely important decision come out of the federal court down in Miami yesterday. Judge Eileen Cannon ruled that Jack Smith, a private citizen, could not be constitutionally appointed to, be a U.S. attorney. and he's the one responsible for the indictment in the classified document case, as well as the indictment against President Trump up in D.C. For the alleged obstruction of Congress. That's the one on which I'm an unindicted co-conspirator. And Judge Cannon is being hammered in the press and by lefty academics who saying that there was no basis for her decision. It is a tour de force. It's a 93-page opinion. It's meticulously argued and reasoned. And, I think in very short order, we're going to have what we call a circuit split between the federal courts of appeals that cover Florida, the 11th Circuit, and the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals that handles the D.C. case. And we'll get the Supreme Court to weigh in. And we've already got a nod from the Supreme Court by, its most senior member of that court, Justice Thomas, indicating that Judge Cannon is absolutely right. So we'll see how this plays out. But, look, this crowd that's attacking her do not much believe in the Constitution. And she very carefully, when you're going to appoint an officer, the presumptive appointment process is the president nominates and the Senate confirms. That's required for every officer, required for all principal officers, but it's also the default rule for inferior officers. And Judge Cannon makes a pretty good argument on why Jack Smith is a principal officer, but she says even if he's not, if he's an inferior officer, and the line there is between officer and mere employees, he can only be appointed in an office that was created by an act of Congress and the power to appoint delegated to the head of department. And there is no statute creating this office or delegating the appointment to this uncreated office to the Attorney General. And that's the problem, the constitutional problem that lies at the heart of her decision. And I think she's absolutely right.
And it's crazy too, because I would think that President Trump would have had presidential immunity anyway. And when we look at people like, Joe Biden having classified documents in his garage, he as vice president or senator never would have had the authority to have these documents outside of a SCIF. Yet President Trump, once he declassified these documents, he had every right to hold them. And he's the only one that had an FBI raid with FBI agents turning off the cameras and going through Melania's underwear drawers looking for things. It was a disgrace. As a constitutional attorney with all of these cases, John, we look at what happened in New York, for instance, where we know that Matthew Colangelo was number 3 at the Biden DOJ, moved to a state case, and laws were changed in order to bring that case. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, so the New York statute on, false statements in business records is a misdemeanor and a short statute of limitations. It's not considered a very serious crime, if a crime at all. And the statute of limitations had already expired. So what they did is they take that, they alter the statute of limitations, and then they say, it's not just a misdemeanor if the purpose of the business record is to violate some other federal law. To this day, we still don't know what other federal law there was.
Wasn't there a multiple choice?
Yeah, it was multiple choice, and we don't have to have unanimous jury agreement on which one. As long as you all agree that something was out there, that's enough. Well, that's not controlling Supreme Court precedent. That requires a unanimous jury verdict on every element of the offense. So that's one huge violation. But the other problem is there was not an underlying crime here. The Department of Justice, the Federal Election Commission that have jurisdiction over campaign finance violations, both recognized that there was no violation here. But Judge Marchant refused to allow the expert on that issue, Brad Smith, former chairman of the Federal Election Commission, to testify and say that there was no violation. It's quite clear that what we have here is a preconceived outcome and not letting anything get in the way of getting to that outcome in order to keep this guy off the ballot by a crowd who keeps claiming that they're for our democracy. We exhibit our commitment to democracy by not letting the people have a say on who's on the ballot. I mean, it's just craziness.
Now, isn't it interesting as well that most of these people involved in these cases, we have Mark Pomerantz, for instance, who pled the Fifth, stating, the Biden DOJ wasn't communicating with this case, brag, and we know that he was. He pled the Fifth. And then secondly, it's amazing to me just the lawfare that we've seen, even with you and Rudy Giuliani. These people want to destroy you. And I reject this Leninist destruction of democracy. By all means, destroy it, I say. We're a constitutional republic, and this democracy they decry, they have a different definition for it. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think their definition is our democracy means keep Democrats in power, which is a different understanding of democracy. And look, you're right. Our country is not a democracy. The founders, following classical Greek political philosophy, thought democracy, that is raw democracy, pure majority vote, does not protect individual rights. That's why we have a constitutional republic that protects individual rights, protects the minority as well as the rights of the majority. So it's not a democracy, it's a republic. But quite apart from that, they have been very open in what they're attempting to achieve with the lawfare against me and President Trump. One of the co-founders of this group called the 65 Project, which filed bar complaints against all of the lawyers that were involved in any of the election litigation. It says our goal is not just to get them all disbarred, but to make them so toxic in their firms and their communities that lawyers won't want to step up and take on these kind of election challenges again. In other words, they'll have a free hand as far as the eye can see to commit whatever illegalities in future elections they want, and people will be cowered into not saying or doing anything about it. And this is their goal, and it is about as counter to our protections in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, as one can imagine. And unfortunately, they're making headway in accomplishing these goals, which is one of the reasons why I'm standing up as hard as I am to it, because it will destroy the rule of law and the adversarial system of justice in this country if we don't fight against what they're trying to do.
And good old Mark Elias at Arabella Financial on the front lines on this. And if you don't know who Arabella Financial is, go back to season 1 of Uncover California, where we had Hayden Ludwig from the Capital Research Center in talking about Arabella Financial and the billions of dollars with Mark Elias that they've been pouring into these lawfare cases. You know, John, you were President Trump's attorney. And I'm sure when you saw what happened over a few days ago, it must have really struck you. But you have been in the bullseye of Mark Elias and these crazy prosecutors. You were standing up for election integrity. Why don't you tell everybody what you saw in the election and why you felt it important to stand up for the last 2020 election?
Well, look, and my primary focus, there were a lot of attorneys working on different aspects of this. My primary role was to be looking at illegality in the conduct of the election, which opened the door for fraud. But fraud at that point is very hard to prove, and you've got to have it proved with specificity before you can even bring a case. But the illegality is a different matter. And the foundational principle at stake here is Article 2 of the Constitution that assigns exclusive power to the state legislatures to direct the manner of choosing presidential electors. Through much of our nation's history, the legislatures just chose the electors themselves. But since the Civil War, all of the states have had the electors chosen by popular vote. But that means that the manner in which those electors are chosen is the election code. Is signature verification required? Can you have absentee ballots for any reason or only if you're in the military? All of these rules become the manner for that the legislature has set out. And those rules in each of the swing states were suspended, dramatically altered, or just dispensed with by non-legislative actors. And that meant the election was conducted unconstitutionally. And then we had to deal with the question of what to do about it. And obviously, there are technical violations of election codes in every election. I mean, no election is perfect. But in my assessment, the legislature had the power in the wake of that illegality to try and assess the impact of that illegality in order to, as best as they could, articulate who would have won the election but for the illegality, so that the will of the people, the consent of the governed, was properly portrayed with the certified electors.
Right. You know, I live in Commie, California. Our elections haven't been safe and secure here for a long time. And we have watched the California process after COVID spread throughout the state. And I can tell you in 2022, I was a candidate for the state assembly. My son got out of boot camp, mailed in his ballot. It never got there, even though we tracked it on ballot tracks. And basically, when I talked to the county clerk about it, he basically looked at me and said, "Oh, well, sorry. That's unacceptable in America." Now, a lot of Democrats say all of these Trump cases went to court and they were found, that there was no fraud. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, many of these cases, if not all, were dismissed upon standing. Can you explain to everybody what that means and what your opinion is on that?
Sure. Depending on how you count which cases were election challenges for 2020 and which were just more generic, there's somewhere between 65 and 100 cases. In almost every instance, they were dismissed on technical jurisdictional grounds. Some properly. It may surprise most people to learn that ordinary voters don't have standing to challenge illegality in the election because they don't have a particularized injury. They have an injury that they share just equally with everybody else. That's why these, the cases that do have standing typically involve the candidate or the campaign committees. In Pennsylvania, though, the court there held that the candidate and the campaign committee don't have standing to raise the unconstitutional issue. Only the legislature has the standing to do that, which is nonsense and contrary to the well-developed standing doctrine. But there were other issues that I'll give you one example. So there was a guidance issued by one of the secretaries of state. I'm drawing a blank right now whether it was Michigan or Wisconsin. That was clearly contrary to state law and therefore illegal. And they challenged it before the election. And the court held, well, that's just a guidance until they actually follow the guidance on election day. Your case is not ripe. And so the action was dismissed. And then they followed the guidance, illegal guidance on election day. And so they brought the suit again. And the court held, you can't wait till your guy loses to bring this suit. You should have brought it beforehand. So when they say that 65 cases were out there and they rejected Trump's fraud claims in every one of them, it's just not true. They didn't reach any of the evidence in almost all of the cases. And of those they did, Trump won, 3 or 4 out of 5 of them, 60, 75% of them. The right to have observers in the Philadelphia Convention Center. He won that. But the demand that you follow the statute on signature verification, the Pennsylvania court said, no, there's no signature verification. And it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it. So the things were never finally, we had a case out of Wisconsin where the Wisconsin Supreme Court even said, oh, we don't think there's anything really serious here that warrants our attention. And 2 years later, the court held the drop boxes in Wisconsin were illegal. and that, that was about 100,000 ballots. The state margin was 20,000. And then last week, the Wisconsin Supreme Court reversed itself and said, no, we were wrong. It's legal. Had a change in the membership on the court, and so the dissenters with the new member got rid of its prior controlling precedent anyway. I could go on, but the notion that the courts looked at these evidence and said there wasn't any problem here is just patently false.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because I did watch a lot of the hearings before a lot of these things were going to court. I saw thousands of affidavits. I saw a lot of evidence, like, for instance, why Ruby Freeman would get a Medal of Honor is beyond me. I have never had it explained why they pulled suitcases from under a table and ran them through the machines multiple times after kicking the observers out. I have yet to have it explained why a truck of filled out ballots would go from New York City to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the truck driver would be told, oh, go away. He would come back and his truck would be gone. I think that the 2020 election was death by 1,000 cuts. From COVID to the mass mail-in voting. I mean, there's just so many things that went wrong in that election. The Zuckerbucks. All of it. So I thank you, sir, for standing up for election integrity. Because you've done this, they've come after you quite hard. Do you want to tell everybody what happened to you with basically, just like Rudy Giuliani, they've come for your law license. They've come for your reputation. And you're a very accomplished man. You actually were a clerk for Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. You are a constitutional attorney. Tell us what they've done to you.
Well, I had bar complaints filed against me in 3 different places, the District of Columbia, the California Bar, and the Supreme Court of the United States. After $750,000 and a 10-week bar trial, the California Bar Court recommended that I be disbarred. That the bar court itself has no authority to do that. That's just a recommendation, and ultimately has to be decided by the California Supreme Court. And we are vigorously contesting the recommendation on appeal. But the D.C. bar had been kind of holding on its investigation, waiting to see what California did. And then once California made that recommendation, they said, well, you've effectively been suspended in California, so we're going to suspend you here. Interestingly, though, the complaint against me in the U.S. Supreme Court got nowhere because it's frivolous, and the Supreme Court appears to have recognized it was frivolous. And I notified the court after the California bar recommendation, and the court clerk sent back a letter saying, "Thanks very much. Just keep us apprised if in fact and when the Supreme Court of California takes any action, if at all, because it's only then that this would be triggered." The Supreme Court didn't see that there was any basis, apparently, because they've taken no action in the 2 years since the complaint was filed there of investigating and whether. So the U.S. Supreme Court thinks what I did nothing wrong, but the California Bar Court, they think otherwise, and so this disconnect, or the weaponization of the disciplinary process to go after political opponents, is a very dangerous thing, because its aim is to silence lawyers from raising questions about illegality in the election. Or more broadly, I mean, which lawyer is going to want to step up and represent parents who are complaining about school board policies that are contrary to the government's perceived wisdom? This is the attempt to shut down. Anyway, so that was the first step. I get unindicted co-conspirators number 2 status in D.C. I'm indicted co-conspirator number 3 in Georgia for, among other things, responding to a request from Georgia legislators to tell them what their authority is, their constitutional authority. And so one of the counts against me was soliciting the legislature to violate their oath of office, even though they're the ones that called me to come testify. And then I'm now indicted in Arizona as well, even though I had no communications with any of the electors there, no involvement with any of the litigation. And one suspects it's only because I've become very outspoken about illegality in the election elsewhere in the country that they wanted to try and silence me by bringing these criminal charges there as well. And
this is so dangerous.
I often have now compared it that when we had our revolution from Great Britain, one of the reasons we did it was because of the thing called the English common law on seditious libel. The rule there was you could not criticize the government, and truth was not a defense, because the greater the truth, the greater the libel. If what you are saying is true, it brings the government even into greater disrepute than if what you're saying is false. Our First Amendment was designed in part to overturn or repudiate that old notion, because we have a constitutional right to criticize our government and to petition our government for redress of grievances. And I'll tell you, I mean, the fire hose of illegality that I was dealing with back in 2020, there were grievances aplenty. And so the people that were bringing these lawsuits and that were speaking out against it and continue to speak out against it, that conduct is constitutionally protected.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And what they've done even to attorney-client privilege, I mean, they've blown that up. We've seen that with everybody. Have you ever seen anything like this in your entire career being an attorney?
No, I've not. We seem to have developed a set of rules that apply only if it's Trump or Trump related. One of my colleagues calls it Trump law. If it involves Trump, there isn't no law.
Right.
And there is such a single-minded focus to prevent Trump from getting reelected, and to take him off of the political stage, because he is challenging a government run amok, a government that no longer feels confined with the enumerated powers we gave it in our Constitution. And Trump is challenging that. And they've got to take him out and anybody that joins with him in that effort. And, the rules be damned. I mean, is what their mentality seems to be.
Well, and I will say here flat out, Trump derangement syndrome is a deadly mind virus. And I think our media has a lot to do with this. They have knowingly lied to the American people for 8 years, starting from the moment that Donald Trump came down that escalators with the plan laid out in Andy's office. And what happened to Hillary Clinton for paying for a foreign dossier to start Russiagate, where we spent $40 million in taxpayer money for a special counsel that was built on a sham. And if you watch CNN or MSNBC, who are your experts? Andrew Weissman, Mueller's Pitbull, Peter Strzok. Trump's not going to be president, right? No, we'll stop him. John Brennan, James Clapper. I mean, these guys basically, in my opinion, committed treason. They had an actual plan to overthrow an elected government, and yet nothing happens to them. I think even with Hillary Clinton, she got a $600 fine very quietly, and they continue to lie to the point the president was almost assassinated now. Where were you, John, when the president was giving his speech? Were you watching or did you hear about it?
I was not watching.
What happened?
I was at a conference, and all of a sudden, everybody in the room's phone started going off with their Twitter feed and announcements. And a couple of people in the conference had been up at their hotel rooms and were watching part of the speech and came down and reported what they'd seen. It was extraordinary and, quite frankly, miraculous that he survived. And my heart goes out to the police, fire chief's family.
Yes,
the
Corey
man who
Cupertino
heroically placed his body in front of his wife and daughter in order to protect them, and lost his life in the process. What a tragedy. Yeah. And even more, as we're learning more, that people saw, including Secret Service and others, saw this fellow with a rifle on top of the roof before the shots were fired. I don't know how we got to such a catastrophic security failure as that appears to be. But I hope people get beyond the partisan and hyper-partisanness of it and get to the bottom of that security failure, because something like that never should have happened.
And I don't trust Merrick Garland to do so, no offense. He's shown his partisanship from the beginning. There should have been one of our own Secret Service snipers on that roof. There's no reason that shooter should have ever had clear sight to the president. And it was an epic failure, I will give the people credit that dove on top of the president. No more women that are 5'2" tall. Sorry, you can't cover a 6'3" man. The DEI policies need to quit. John, our 30 minutes went so fast. I'm going to have you back on for sure. What has happened to you has cost your family dearly, a lot of money, and you're still fighting for your freedom and for the truth. Where can people find you, and where can they donate to help you with all these court expenses?
Well, the best place, and our expenses are well over $1.5 million already. We're anticipating $3.5 million or maybe $4 million before we're done. My legal defense fund site is doing well, but we need more, a lot more. It's givesendgo.com/Eastman. And three things about that. One, people can donate, and anything you can give was much appreciated and helpful. It lets me stay in the fight. You can send prayers, and my wife and I read them, and they're heartwarming. But we also use that as a place to put updates with articles that really seem to understand what's going on. And I'm going to commend to your audience's attention Update 43, which is where I link an article my two children wrote in defense of their father. And it's heartwarming. And then also linked there are a couple of articles my wife wrote describing the dangers of this lawfare. She's a PhD in political philosophy as well, and it's a very insightful couple of articles. Update number 43. And, please look at those and the other updates. You'll see great articles about people finally starting to understand what's going on, and therefore why I'm fighting as hard as I am.
A lie cannot stand in the light of truth.
That's
Pastor
true.
Rob McCoy said that. And Eric, what's that other one? It's there was another one that Rob said, my pastor's just the absolute best. He comes up with these phrases that are amazing. But again,
givesendgo.com/Eastman. And, a couple of Churchill quotes, if if you've not made any enemies in the world, it means you haven't done anything. So you've made enemies good. That means you've accomplished something. And the other one is, if you're going through hell, don't stop, keep going. So
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorites is, if you want to enter politics and you want friends, get a dog. So, John, I thank you for not backing down. I thank you for being a warrior for truth. Your family's been through so much. And audience, I really want you to donate to him. I know there's so many things to donate to right now, but when we have warriors fighting for truth, and we're watching lawfare at a level in our country that we've never seen before, including the imprisonment lately of Steve Bannon, who should not be in jail over Schiffy's Hollywood trial. Sham frickin' J6 court. We need to stand with these people. What are you willing to give up for this country? You know, your treasures mean nothing if we don't have a country. So I'm going to ask all of you, please dig deep, help the Eastman family, spelled Eastman, give, send, go. Make sure to go there. John, will you come back and see us again?
I will, but let me give a challenge to your audience. Today's July 16th. It ends in 6. So if they make a donation, make the dollar amount end in 6, and we'll see how many people in your audience participate.
All right. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon. Thanks so much for coming on. You don't know how much I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Raise a glass to our new sponsor, Republican Red Wine. It's the perfect choice for patriotism, and it's really good to drink. With bottles like Drain the Swamp, 45-47, you'll be the biggest hit at your next Republican party. You know what? It also makes a great conversation piece at the dinner table. To receive 15% off, use promo code CALI, CALI, when you go to Republican Red Wine to purchase your new wine bottles.
Welcome to the MAGA Mall. We have the largest selection of the finest quality MAGA caps and Trump caps that are made. We have over 250 hats and 1,000 different products in 28 product categories. All the caps are made from premium cotton twill. Everything on them is embroidered. As a matter of fact, in the last election cycle, we donated over 45,000 caps to Trump-endorsed candidates and conservative causes all the way across America. And you can buy any of our products by going to our website. It's at themagamall.com, like on the sign over here, and use promo code CALI, and that's for Uncover California. That will get you a 10% discount off of all of our products and also help this worthy cause. And remember, it's always a MAGA day at the MAGA Mall.
Thank you for coming back and staying tuned for Uncover California. Our next guest, you know her, you love her, and there's just so much for us to talk about. I can tell you, few days ago, I was at lunch with her and some friends, and it's a rare thing that we get to do because this woman is so busy. And afterwards, I went home, turned on the Trump rally, and saw the horrible assassination attempt on President Trump. Jennifer Van Laar, welcome back to Uncover California. Jennifer is the chief editor at Red State. Hey, Jen.
Yeah, Hi, it's such a different topic than we were going to talk about. We were going to talk about Gavin Newsom and all of his shenanigans, but I think the calculus on all of that changed Saturday after President Trump survived, thank God, that attempted assassination. I don't think that Gavin Newsom will be anything for the Democrats' ticket this year now. I think they're going to end up sticking with Joe Biden. And so while I'm still going to be working on the special project that we were going to talk about, right now, everyone's focus is on this political violence in our country and the way that the Dems don't seem to have learned any lessons from what happened on Saturday.
Well, and they're continuing the rhetoric, which just kills me. It's like, how can you... Trump derangement syndrome is a mental virus. It just is. And so, Jen, we go to lunch. I come home. I start watching the rally. I'm blown away We text with each other. Our other friend says, holy, and what happened from there? Because since this has happened, the ongoing threats and political violence and rhetoric from the left is continuing.
Right.
Tell us what you have found out.
Right. And you and I are no stranger to our local Democrats and liberals in Ventura County, which is a little surprising to people because you posted on Sunday pictures of this amazing rally to support President Trump in Simi Valley, and just hundreds of cars, mostly trucks, and just lots of people there supporting him. So you would think in this conservative area that we don't have as much of that pushback, but we have, while they're a minority of people, they're surprisingly vitriolic and abusive. I know we've both suffered abuse from these people. My family suffered abuse from these people, and they're a little scary at times.
Yeah.
And so what happened is lately, I guess it was Monday evening, it came out that this professor at Cal Lutheran, a local university in Thousand Oaks, had posted on Facebook under Fox News's post about the attempted assassination on Trump. And she said, "I'm just sorry they missed. I hope it's not the last attempt. And if I would like to do it myself if I wasn't so far away."
That's evil. I mean, there is just no explanation for being that vile, and she should be fired immediately from Cal Lutheran. And I agree with you. You know, we've got this conservative community where I, even when I ran for office, became number 2 on Conejo Antifa's hit list. And I've got stalkers to the point I've had to file police reports and everything else. But this is a professor at a university that used to be a Christian university. They've kind of swayed off that. But to be that vile and knowing that this woman is teaching your children, you wonder why we've got kids out there supporting Hamas. Who is she, Jen? And do you have any follow-up on what's happened with her?
Yeah, so she's Scottish and came to this country after getting her degrees, and she and her husband work in the area. He's an engineer, not involved in academia. And then I think they have 3 daughters. They live in Simi Valley, so our little city. And
Our
she
red
commutes
city.
over to Thousand Oaks with her 3 she has the 3 daughters, and teaches, I think it's pediatric exercise physiology, something like that, over at Cal Lu. And to me, what she said, I mean, there were some people in the heat of the moment, oh, too bad he missed. And even though that's wrong, I can have a little grace, especially if it's in the heat of the moment, people say stupid things. But to go to so far to say, I hope it's not the last attempt, and that they wish that they could do it themselves, when our little town we were talking about off the air, Nicholas Roski, who wanted to kill Chief Justice Kavanaugh and flew across the country to do it, he's from Simi Valley as well. Then we have another professor from Moore Park College, Loay Al-Nalji, who murdered Paul Kessler, a Jewish man, back in November. So we have a huge problem with political violence just in our little community, which is one of the safest, according to the FBI, I think top 10 safest communities for decades. We have this junk going on. So our Ventura County GOP, which you're a member of, the chair sent out a letter to Cal Lutheran this morning demanding the immediate firing of Louise Kelly for her comments, and also referencing the Nicholas Roski incident and how terrible this problem of political violence in our community is.
And what's going on with Cal Lutheran, really? You know, I know there was our former Congressman Gagley had a library there that he had paid for, and they ripped that down. If you go to their chapel now, it looks like a new age freaking DEI haven. Something's happening at Cal Lutheran. Something's happening at our schools and academia,
right,
where it's just this unhealthy, venomous poison. I would pull my kids. I would not have my kids at any of these schools.
Yeah, like you said, Congressman Gallagly, that's still in litigation. He had donated and raised a bunch of money for a center there at Cal Lu having to do with studying government, political science, that kind of thing. Because for 2 decades, he was our congressman and he was Simi Valley mayor before that. And then a new administration came in and just kind of said, forget this, and wouldn't refund the money. which I think is absolutely wrong. And if you have a local congressman, whether or not all the students are going to be okay with his politics or whatever, if they're getting donors to send in money for kids to study political science and maybe do internships in Washington and have a speaker series there where people are talking about topics of political import, that shouldn't just be disregarded because the administration doesn't like their politics. And actually, Bernie Sanders had something good to say on Sunday. He was on Meet the Press, and he told Kristen Welker, politics is supposed to be boring. We're not supposed to be engaging in all this rhetoric. We're supposed to be talking about policy. Can we get back to talking about policy? And I thought that was a really good point that he made.
Yeah, it was a good point. At the same time, we've heard his rhetoric over the last 8 years as well. I would like to see
he hasn't been as, it's bad, but he is not nearly as bad as a lot of the Democrats are on that stuff.
Yeah, well, and you look at people like, AOC and Ilhan Omar and, Tlaib and all these people, their venomous hatred is just disgusting towards the Jewish people against our constitutional order. There's a Marxist ideology that is spreading throughout our universities and our country that it's frightening. The dean now at Cal Lutheran, isn't she new as well?
They just got a new president. It's a man, and I don't have the letter in front of me. I can look at it real quick, but they did around the time that Paul Kessler was murdered, the woman who was the president at Cal Lu resigned. And so they have a new, John Nunez is his name. So hopefully he will take Chairman Anderson's letter seriously. I do know that our Ventura County Star, Fox 11, and a couple others are looking at it. So it looks like it will start to get some mainstream media attention, because I think this professor saying, if I was closer, I would do it myself. That is a threat right there. That should warrant a visit from the FBI, the Secret Service, if they care.
100%. And then we have to understand this kid that came out of Simi Valley that tried to assassinate Kavanaugh. Do we know what school he went to?
He was going to some different schools. He was homeschooled, and he had some mental issues. And so we can't necessarily say it was all the political indoctrination in that case, but he had some suicide attempts and had some mental issues there. But this environment, you think about the young man who tried to kill President Trump. He was, for 8 years of his life, of his 20-year-old life, or 20-year-long life, since it's ended, he heard all of this about Trump was going to end democracy. He was going to jail all these people. He was going to be this fascist dictator. And he probably thought he was going to be a hero, that he was going to save the world from this terrible fate of having Donald Trump again in office. And it's due to all of this rhetoric from the adults who should know better.
Yeah, and it's so sad, too, because, I look at our Congress people on the left, and I look at our media, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, MSDNC, and you look at what they have said about President Trump over the last 8 years. They have knowingly lied to the American public for political gain. And they have created this mind virus of Trump derangement syndrome. And everything that they have said about him can be easily debunked. That's the craziest thing. I mean, how many years later, we now have Snoops has finally admitted the Charlottesville hoax thing was not true.
Right. And then Amber Rose at the RNC last night saying that the whole reason she started looking into Donald Trump was she wanted to prove her dad wrong because she believed the lies that the left was telling. And credit to her. You can disagree with her personal life all you want, but credit to her for actually doing the research and admitting she was wrong.
Yeah, and I want to say something to Republicans about that. Stop being Pharisees. Stop being hypocrites. You are no better than anybody else. We all fall short of the glory of God. And I'm kind of really sick of this. Well, this person isn't perfect. You know what? In God's sight, You can think a woman is sexy and you're guilty of adultery in his sight. The blood covers the sin. It's time to stop being pharisaical. And thank you, Republicans that are open and loving to other people. I stand with Amber. I thought her speech was probably one of the best speeches last night.
Agree. And nobody's holding up her lifestyle as like what you should have your kids do or anything like that. You know, in my mind, live and let live, but people can disagree on that too. But what she said last night was spot on.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the girl, really. I think she's pretty. I wish she wouldn't have done the tattoo on her head, but that's my personal preference. She can do whatever she wants. I know nothing about her. All I know is for her to stand up there with the courage to say, you know what? I was wrong. And you know what? Even with the mainstream media, if they were to stand up and say, you know what? We've really misreported things over the last 8 years. You know, Hillary did pay for the dossier and we probably shouldn't have had a special counsel. President Trump was never a Russian asset and Hunter Biden's laptop was real. I might have a little respect for them. But the way I see them now, the damage that they have done to this country and continue to do so to cover their butts it's sickening. It's sickening. And that's why I'm so grateful for people like you, Jen, an actual journalist that does the work, that fact checks her sources, that doesn't just jump out to put things out there to be first and wrong. You actually take the time to do the research and do what these journalists that sit in Washington, D.C. or New York or L.A. offices and never leave their desk do. I commend you for your work. I think you're fantastic. And I also love you because you're my friend. Where do you see this going as far as this rhetoric and the violence that has been spewed?
We just have to keep holding the left's feet to the fire on this because they're not going to stop until we continue to just hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah. And then Joe Biden gave an interview last night with Lester Holt where he said he didn't mean put Trump in the bullseye. You know, it's ridiculous. They have called him a Nazi. They have called him a fascist. They have called him a threat to democracy. We're a constitutional republic, by the way. You know, what did they expect was going to happen? And the failure of the Secret Service in this instance, I'm sorry, I now have questions how any shooter could have been in the line of sight of President Trump on Saturday. What are your thoughts on the Secret Service and what happened?
Exactly what you just said. And hopefully we get to the bottom of this and that Kimberly Cheadle is fired with prejudice.
Yes. Yeah, and I do not trust Merrick Garland or Ray to look into this deeply. You know, we're talking about the guys that every time they get caught, they wiped their cell phones. You know, the J6 committee wiped their cell phones. Hillary with the document case of her own, wiped her server and smashed her cell phones. The J6 committee, they deleted their messages. Russiagate, they deleted their messages. I would think that those should be, preserved documents, don't you think?
Absolutely. And if they claim that the NSA didn't have some kind of archive of it, they're all lying.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it. I mean, there's a lot that we need to get to the bottom of. As far as the rhetoric, you as a journalist who probably have had more arrows pointed at you from the left, I know that a former congresswoman tried to sue you and you won that case because you told the truth. Have you been targeted personally lately for just telling the truth about people? Because I pray for your safety, Jen.
Thank you. I mean, not that I know of. If they have, they've been quiet about it. I mean, I get the same stupid messages on Twitter that everyone gets who dares to speak out on the conservative side, but they're just mostly, oh, you're fat and ugly and whatever stupid stuff they say. So I don't really care. But I have not had the personal targeting in a few years, thank goodness.
Well, I have lately from a local nut job we all know. I'm actually really considering doing a restraining order on him because his obsession has no limit. You know, it's crazy to me that we are living in this conservative Simi Valley is probably one of the red cities in California. It's Reagan country. MAGA, you drive up my street, there's Trump flags everywhere. Yet this small faction of people are so venomous. We're sending our kids to these colleges where professors are now saying, I wish I could have shot President Trump. We're in a scary place. You know, we send our children to school in order to learn healthy debate, not to shut down the other side and say, well, I'm not talking to you because you're a racist or you're a fascist. It's just absolutely insane. And I just really pray that we have change. Jen, do you have anything else you'd like to add to what's going on in these local college campuses and everything that's going on?
Just that parents need to speak up, alumni need to speak up. I know dozens of alumni of Cal-Lu, because it's local college here. People that I grew up with went to Cal-Lu when it wasn't crazy, and they are all just very angry at this. Don't give them money. I'm a Boston University alumni. I don't give my college money, you know, the College of AOC and Ibrahim Kendi. So make your voice known by saying, no, I'm not giving you money. And I'm going to, if my kid goes there, I'm going to either yank them or I'm going to keep hammering you on what you're doing to stifle freedom of speech and to promote hate speech, true hate speech, not what they falsely claim as hate speech.
Yeah, and again, you're a racist, you're a fascist, your threat to democracy is not a winning argument. It's not an argument at all. It's a false accusation. It takes minimal brain matter to make that argument. So I really hope that we can start having conversations in this country again. I really do hope that we can tone it down. I know that the left is now saying, well, President Trump is the one that has caused all of this.
Whatever.
Bullshit. Sorry, Lord. Bullshit. You know, I just look at so many things that they have said about him over the last few years. And of course, he's going to get angry that he's been lied about. And of course, he's going to stand up. So, you know what, Jen? It's just crazy to me that we're living in this world today. You mean the world to me. And I hope, well, I am going to have you back on. You're like a regular now. I think this is your 4th time on. And I'm honored that you take the time for me. Before we go, though, I do want to talk about the RNC convention. J.D. Vance, what do you think of Trump's pick?
I mean, now that it's done, it's done. So, you know, I think we all need to go for it. I really have not spent that much time reading about him in the past, so I don't want to say anything too harsh. I am a little concerned with some of the union ties, and because I'm very much for the right to work, and I want to make sure that that's preserved for our small business people. But, you know, go Trump, go JD Vance. That's the team I'm on.
Yeah, and for those Republicans out there, because I've been getting a lot of emails about, oh my gosh, he used to be a never Trumper. Yeah, he did, just like that girl that spoke the other night. After he found out the media was lying to him, he had a change of heart. He has voted with President Trump for the last 5 years, and he has stood up against the media. I embrace his vice presidency. I love the new plane. And I'm voting Trump Vance in 2024. So, Jen, thanks for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you.
At redstate.com and on Twitter at Jen Van Laar.
Oh, and tell everybody about Red State's VIP membership, because that's super exciting.
Yeah, so for less than $50 a year, you can support our independent journalism, because big tech is always trying to cancel us. So if you go on Red State, click at the top, subscribe, and you can become a VIP member. It's really, like I said, not that expensive. And then you don't have to see any ads when you're reading our articles, which everyone hates pop-up ads. Easy way to get rid of it and support good journalism at the same time.
And I can tell you, all your journalists, you know, Bob Hogue, just there's so many great journalists at Red State, and you guys are always breaking the stories. Like I'm blown away. Like you're usually one of the first Twitter feeds I go to when I go online, because I'm like, what's Jen up to? Like, even before you came on today, where I was like, is Jen on yet? And Eric's like, no, she's not here yet. So I was like, let me check her Twitter feed, because I know that if you're tweeting, you could be caught up in something. But I want to thank you for your friendship. I want to thank you for the excellent journalism you do. We need more people like you. You're never partisan. You just tell the truth as it is, and you don't care what side of the aisle somebody's on. So Jennifer Van Laar, we're going to have you back again soon. Thanks for coming on.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so our Trumptilla was so much fun. We sold it out. We had a boat parade that organically happened. Well, guess what? As you know, my biggest goal here at Uncover California is talking about the truth. Well, because of that, I have decided to support 2 films that everybody must see. We're doing 2 movie premieres at the Roxy Theater in Camarillo. The first one will be on August 1st at 7 o'clock, and that one is called Letter to the American Church. It is based off a book by Eric Metaxas. The producers, everybody's going to be there. It is a movie premiere. Make sure to get your tickets. If you're not on my email list, make sure to get on it. You can message me through uncovercali.com. The second film we have, I'll tell you what, bring your tissue boxes. It is called The War on Truth, and it is the film by Chris Bugard and Nick Searcy, and they were on the show a couple weeks ago talking about this movie. It is about the lies of January 6th. There's a lot of footage that you've never seen before. Again, we're doing a movie premiere, 7 p.m. at the Roxy Theater. Tickets will not be sold at the theater. Make sure to go to uncovercali.com to get on my email list so we can send you the information for the tickets. Otherwise, you can scan the QR codes on the flyers that are put up right now. Hope to see you soon. Tune in next week when we will have DHS whistleblower Tara Lee Rodas join us to talk about the 85,000 missing migrant children under the Biden administration. Have a great day. Bye.